I'm confident that if at this moment we do not wake up to this threat, then we as a country will die in our sleep. The response to this has to be that each of us make a commitment to see clearly, to speak honestly, and to act decisively in this moment of truth. I, for one, see more clearly than ever.
Beto O'Rourke with a warning and a pointed call to action in his big campaign relaunch speech today. That's after a week off the trail when O'Rourke chose to stay in his hometown, El Paso, as it recovers from that racially motivated mass shooting at a Walmart. Today was also a chance to address a question he's being asked more and more.
There have even been some who've suggested that I stay in Texas and run for Senate. But that would not be good enough for this community. That would not be good enough for El Paso. That would not be good enough for this country. We must take the fight directly to the source of this problem, that person who has caused this pain and placed this country in this moment of peril, and that is Donald Trump.
Joining the conversation, MSNBC correspondent Garrett Haake. You were there for the speech. I know you had a chance to talk to Beto O'Rourke afterwards. What's your headline out of it?
This is angry Beto. This is a very far cry from hope and change, but this is someone who's now going to go out on the campaign trail and essentially make his campaign about Donald Trump far more explicitly than he has up until this point, in the hopes of doing two things: either winning this nomination for himself by, I think, making an argument similar to the one that Joe Biden has been making, or at least keeping everyone focused on the common enemy for Democrats here in this case. You saw last week how frustrated O'Rourke got at questions he was getting from reporters about, is this president a racist or not? Are you going to go to the Iowa State Fair and eat a pork chop there? This is someone who I think is trying to snap the focus of this race back where he thinks it belongs, or at least where he thinks Democrats want to see it go. Politically, it's sort of a risky move. Anytime you're talking about a reset of your campaign, that means things are probably not going exactly how you want them to. But when you're at where O'Rourke is at right now, sort of bottom tier, or bottom of the top tier, I guess you could say, about 2% in the polls. He's got a little bit of a money problem, but he's already qualified for the next debate. Why not roll the dice and be politically exactly who you are and who you want to be, and let the chips fall where they may?
Well, let me ask the panel about this, because if, again, we're always talking about in any other universe, but in any other universe, when you put together a list of criteria for what a presidential candidate should be, the kind of characteristics that he or she should put out there, angry would not be at the top of the list. And yet, when you look at a lot of the Democratic base, the Democratic activists, that's exactly how they're feeling. Could this work?
Look, he's making a moral case that this is a moral crusade against the single greatest threat in modern history to the United States of America, which is the present occupant of the Oval Office. Is this about whether there's a public option for health care, or whether, Medicaid is going to be expanded? He's making the case that we have this perilous mortal threat, and that's the focus. And I think it's a very powerful argument. I agree with that argument. And it was a very smart David Brooks column the other day about how, all the Democratic candidates are kind of in the weeds, and they're not talking about this moral threat to America. And Beto is, and that's very compelling.
Well, I do think, Aaron Blake, that one of the things that Garrett said that makes you perk up is he's actually decided to be who he is and to talk about how he's really feeling. Imagine that. I'm assuming that speech was not focus grouped.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I don't know how much calculation there was involved in this, but I think generally speaking, Beto O'Rourke, different candidates have different strengths. Some of them are very good at triangulation. Some of them are very good at raising money, and some of them are very good at kind of emoting and connecting with audiences. I think we see that certainly to some degree with Joe Biden when he's speaking on stage. You see the passion from him. I think if there's another candidate who can do that, it's Beto O'Rourke. If he's going to make a splash in this race, he's probably got to do what he's naturally good at. And what we're seeing in this speech, I think, is more of an effort to play that up. So, there's a fine line between, I think, anger and passion. You can have a little bit of anger, but generally speaking, what you want to convey is passion. And so I think this speech was maybe the first step towards making that a more passionate campaign.
And I'm wondering, Garrett Haake, if Beto, the folks on his team that you talked to, it's not as if the Senate race goes away because he made this speech today. They're going to see how he does. You point out all the obstacles in his path, that he's got a very high hill to climb if he's going to stay in this race. Having said that, it's not like the clock is ticking till tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true. The filing deadline to get into that Senate race would be in December. But I can tell you, as long as I have covered O'Rourke, going back to the last Senate campaign, from the minute that was over until now, never have I heard from him, either in an on-the-record conversation or in private conversations with him or with anyone close to him, any desire to involve himself in that race. I think the best way to think about this is, like most Democrats, Beto O'Rourke really, really did not like Ted Cruz, hated Ted Cruz, would have loved to have seen him thrown out of the Senate. And in that race, he talked a lot about the fact that he could be a good voice for Texas, in part because he was able to work with a senator like John Cornyn. I think then to get just as fired up to jump back into the race, to run against someone who you think is kind of meh, is probably not going to happen. He's also done everything but endorse MJ Hagar, the combat veteran who ran a fairly close House race in that same cycle in 2018 in that race against Cornyn. I do not see it happening, but we are a long way from December.
Yeah, and there are an awful lot of Democrats, frankly, as we know, AB, who would love to see Beto and Bullock and Hickenlooper, who dropped out of the race today and said he's thinking about running for the Senate, have all three of them run for the Senate, because if there's anybody that's even close to their please get him out of there behind Donald Trump, it's Mitch McConnell.
I'm actually really surprised at how little the Democrats in the primary campaign are talking about the need to take the Senate majority back, or they can't get anything done. It's interesting. It just is really on the back burner, and it is crucial for them going forward, for judges, for everything. It is a sign of the near death of the parties. Donald Trump was an insurgent and took over the Republican Party. Bernie almost became the nominee in 2016. The parties barely raise significant money anymore. They have few databases. They cannot pick candidates. It's the Wild West. You have Roy Moore. Stacey Abrams would have knocked off David Perdue in Georgia. She refuses to run. She's going to do her own thing. No one wants to run for the Senate. And the party can't come to these people anymore and say, we're going to help you later if you help us now. Yeah. It's every man for himself.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.